Hi, this is Linda, and you're listening to Sagal Radio. Today in the studio, we are hosting a roundtable discussion with Clarkston's Mayor Ransom and three members of the Clarkston City Council, Diane Leonetti, Dean Moore, and Adam White. We asked our listeners to send in questions and segment subjects through the internet or by other means, and we compiled the questions. For the record, they were not submitted for the approval by the Mayor or the City Council. These questions will drive today's discussion. We'll talk mainly about refugee resettlement issues, city projects, and local businesses. My goal is to give the discussion direction and to ensure questions get answered. Thank you all for joining us today. We have a lot of people who've been waiting to hear from you all, so we'll dive right into it. So just a general question, do you believe that diversity is a strength of Clarkston?
Exactly, yes, it is, very much so. That's the reason I moved there, it's the reason I stay here, that's the reason I work for the future of Clarkston.
Does the rest of the City Council agree?
This is Adam White. Yes, I definitely do. It is absolutely the reason I moved to the city of Clarkston. I was just thinking about it on my way over here. On the night before our wedding, my wife and I had to rent a really large truck in order to get all the donations for refugee organization, IRC, based right in this particular complex. And I brought it over here so that I could clear the house out to help guests be able to stay over at our house before our wedding. So we've been engaged in this. We decided, let's just go ahead and move there. We'll be right in the center of it all. And we moved right next door to the community center, which is kind of an epicenter of a lot of what makes Clarkston kind of tick on the international scene.
What about you, Mayor?
I think it's a strength, and it's a thing that we have to be able to utilize that diversity to make it an asset to the city. And I'm happy that Sagal is hosting this forum that we may get our ideas and thoughts out to the public.
As essentially the movers and shakers of the Clarkston community, what is your vision for Clarkston in maybe the next 5 to 10 years? We can start with the City Council.
I believe that once we start to redevelop our roads and do streetscapes, landscaping, and just basically, renovate the center of Clarkston, we'll begin to see some economic development activity, and that can only help our city. I think it'll be good for everyone because it'll generate an interest in the city, it'll generate more people coming to see what's going on, what we're doing. It'll be a really good business atmosphere as far as if you want to start a business or grow a business. I'm just excited because I don't look at it the way it is now. I really have a vision for what it will be in the future, and I want our refugees, I want our population to be totally involved in it and really embrace it.
You want me to?
Is there anything you would like to add?
Oh yeah. As far as I look at the city for the vision for the next 10 years, 20 years, is to create a base of sustainability now with our refugee population, because we lose so much talent when they're gone. They come here for 90 days and then they ship out because of there's nothing to keep and attract them here. And the magic word is jobs. That's the magic word. And the city is on the path now with a lot of programs that we're putting in place to help prevent this from happening and to keep our refugee citizens here and to make them sustainable in the city and, of course, help the city grow.
So what are some of the perceived weaknesses of Clarkston and some of the strengths as well?
I believe one of the biggest problems is our per capita income is very low, and it prevents developers from really taking a good look at us because they don't believe we've got the population to sustain purchase power, etc. And I also believe the schools are a problem because we don't have the best schools. And when some of the refugee families want to try and move their children to other schools, say some in Tucker, etc., I mean, that shows you the problem right there, because everyone blames the problem on the refugees, and I don't think that's it. I think it's just the way this particular school system for Clarkston is being run?
Weaknesses. I think it's easy for people to attribute the weaknesses to somehow a sudden change, a sudden demographic change. I think that there have been some changes that only upon reflection people realized that Clarkston was a small town that I think was, for all intents and purposes, kind of isolated unto itself. I think it enjoyed being a small town, and I think that there was a huge boom in the Atlanta area, and I think a lot of Atlanta and the surrounding area grew up around Clarkston, and Clarkston perhaps was a little slow to realize what opportunities they had passed up. And now that people are looking back on it, I think that they would like a do-over. And unfortunately, it's an easy thing to say that there is a considerable number of people who have come in under dire circumstances and been resettled in the immediate Clarkston area, and they're starting from scratch. And Clarkston, unfortunately, is, even if we didn't have refugees here, I think we'd still be struggling, because I think, as I said, there were opportunities that were missed, and now we are trying to hit the ground running, doing things in a different way. But we don't have a long track record for that, so we've got some proving to do. I think Clarkston's an amazing place. I've heard it said by many different people as something like a diamond in the rough, and I think our day is yet to be. I hear a lot of anecdote about what Clarkston used to be like. Unfortunately, no two people seem to have the same opinion of what it was. So I'm going to say maybe it's better to just start from now. So Clarkston's a really amazing place. I'm pretty much here to stay.
Mayor?
Mr. Moore.
Mr. Moore?
He's a resident.
Yeah, I agree with Adam. The problems that Clarkston has experienced in the past are the same problems they experience now. There's some property issues that the council is moving to have stricter codes for apartments and housing. And we've got a new dynamic with the new form of government. We've got a city manager form of government for the past 2 years. We've had a city manager in place that's been able to straighten out a lot of the problems that we've had with development, and we're on the verge of doing some big projects to improve the pedestrian and walkability and traffic issues that have been a problem for many years. So we're really turning that around, and I think it's going to be a great place.
Yeah, I agree. We have been so plagued with problems over the past, I've been here 52 years, and that's how long the problems have existed. But in the past 2 to 3 years, I think the City Council has addressed the basic problem. So as a man thinks, so is he. And they just put a beautiful program in place called Clarkston 101, which I think is very, very informative. And we are asking our citizens to come out and learn and be taught about how the city runs, what's beneficial to them, what we can do to help them stay in the city of Clarkston, what we can help them to do, be law-abiding taxpayers, law-abiding property owners, and law-abiding business owners. And that's what's going to make the city grow. We got to collaborate like we're doing now. And that's the basic misconception we've had in the past. Clarkston has had the stigma as, where's Clarkston? Where are you? I'm in Clarkston. Where the devil is Clarkston at? Now people are asking, man, where is Clarkston? We've got to go out there and see what's going on, because we hear things are happening, and we're very proud and happy that PBS chose us to do a piece on us, which helped us get over a lot of humps and misconceptions people had about the city. You know, they met the city council. City council was on film, and they got to see the people actually express and they didn't cut out a lot of that stuff that they said. And I thought it was a beautiful piece, and it helped the city move into a higher realm now. You know, and we're thought of as, there is a possibility, like Adam said, there's a diamond in the rough. Let's go out there and take a look. You know, because today we had some very influential people come out and sit with myself and the city manager, and that has never happened ever. You know, and they're not coming out there to take hold of Clarkston and run away with it and everything. They came out there to basically give us very, very important information that we need to move forward in the way we're going.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, just to carry that further. When about 7 years ago, when my wife and I moved out of the Cabbagetown neighborhood in Atlanta, we had a lot of friends that we left behind. Now, of course, when you say left behind, it's not even 10 miles away.
Yeah.
And it's essentially down, you can just take a single road and it connects between Midtown Atlanta and downtown Clarkston. I've mentioned, I dare say, I've become considerably distanced from my friends who lived only just a short distance down one road, simply because for them, it seemed like we were out in the middle of nowhere. And I think that's an old legacy. I remember going to a birthday party of a guy's about in his mid-70s right before I left. And when I told him that I was moving to Clarkston with my family, he said, "You're doing the right thing. You're moving out to the country with your family. You're going to grow yourself some crops and live off the land."
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, what Clarkston is he talking about?
Clarksville.
No, he absolutely knew where it was. But it's interesting because Clarkston needs to be a destination. And I think that part of it is that Clarkston has never thought of itself as a destination. And one thing that I have to say that I think is magical about Clarkston and the immediate surrounding area is, imagine Clarkston without refugees and former refugees, with an entrepreneurial spirit, with essentially a common culture of being out in public space and just engaging one another. The place would be like a ghost town.
It would be.
I don't want to live in that kind of a place. I mean, certainly I moved to Clarkston because it's just a rich space. I mean, it's amazing to be in those completely new, culture-neutral spaces like the library, and just to be surrounded by everybody. Just it's kind of just a mingling. It's amazing, you know. I love that about Clarkston. I can sit out on my front lawn and with my 6-year-old, and every 10 minutes there's another group of kids that come by and they start playing with my kid. It's like, I mean, it's just a different kind of a place, and so I'm really happy to be there. And where else could I have painted my house the color it did, and it kind of fits in.
And it blended in, yeah.
So it's a general consensus that diversity is a strength of Clarkston. But I guess we couldn't really have this discussion without addressing the article that came out in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution a few weeks ago. So the article reported that state officials under Governor Deal have been asking the federal government to substantially reduce the number of refugees they send to Georgia. They claim that the refugees are draining resources, educational opportunities, and require more police enforcement. So I want to address some of the more specifics that I read up in the article. This question is addressed to Mayor Ransom. Mayor, the article cites that you claim the refugees are draining the city's resources. You say that the city needs time to rehabilitate its aging housing. What do you mean by that statement?
No, they misquoted me. What I said was, when I went to Washington, was that we need to cut the faucet off to fix the pipe. We're straining the resources we have because we can't make the citizens that are here now sustainable. Because why? Because more coming in, and they have to take the money that they were using over here and use it for the new citizens coming in. So what does that do? That deprives the citizens that are already here from the resources that we need to give them. So I asked the Director of Office of Refugee Resettlement and also the State Department if they could see their way clear is to reduce the flow of refugees until we can get some of our programs and collaborate with the refugee agencies that are placing them here to make these citizens sustainable. I mean, you know, they're transient as far as I'm concerned right now because there's no stability here. And it's up to the, I must say that in the past couple of weeks, RISA, Family Service, Refugee Family Services and all, have contacted me. I've met with some of them, and now we're getting down to the root of the problem is that we need to get these programs, we need to make the programs more viable for them. Not just an in and out thing, a swinging door, in other words. And it wasn't I that asked the State Department to do that. It was the governor that asked about the entire state. But I was only asking about Clarkston. We need to slow down the flow so we can do better things for our citizens.
So specifically talking about sustainability, this specific quote is about its housing. So how do you view property in terms of refugee population in Clarkston?
Well, our basic majority of our refugee families here are living in multi-family dwellings, which are apartments. And I'm happy to say that the City Council just recently passed a very stringent property maintenance ordinance, which I felt that was excellent because of our refugee citizens are coming in here and they're moving right back in Swallow. They came out of Swallow. They don't want that. They want a better lifestyle now for them. And the City Council addressed the issue, and that was one of the things that I had brought to the refugee resettlement's attention, is because the agencies weren't doing their jobs as far as making sure that these refugee citizens had a decent place and a clean place to live.
I'd like to chime in on that. Yeah, I think, well, one thing with respect to the ordinance that was recently passed, that is putting the onus on the property owners and their managers to maintain their property to a certain standard, to an established industry standard. And the focus is health and safety, welfare. It's not aesthetic. So, and it's primarily focused on the interior part of the dwelling. So, now in terms of the idea of suggesting that there is some kind of a pattern among refugee service organizations wherein in the initial resettlement period that they are shirking their responsibility for doing the sufficient due diligence to inspect a potential property for occupancy by a newly resettled family. I don't think that's the case. I think what we're talking about is people who who are well beyond the initial resettlement period, where there's a new influx in the caseload, and those staff at those resettlement agencies are not able to keep track of all of these things. And I think that we just want to have a sense of consistency. And we're actually collaborating with DeKalb County. We don't look at this as something that we're trying to press just on the city of Clarkston. We're trying to encourage multifamily property owners and management companies to maintain things. There's no it's not a hardship for them. I think that for them, they may look. I mean, it may be something, and I can't say that I have a clear insight into landlords. What might motivate them, but to be honest, I think we've got a lot of absentee landlords who don't have any desire to put a lot of money into their property investments because they're not being demanded by the tenants to do so. And so, in a way, this ordinance essentially is an advocacy for people, for everyone equally, even those who wouldn't necessarily vote plus are concerned about it.
How do you believe that the reduction of reducing the number of refugees coming into Clarkston is going to help in terms of that, or alleviate some of this burden, or so-called?
I don't think so. I think that the idea of turning off, I think what's unfortunate is that the using the metaphor of turning off the faucet in order to get a plan together kind of rings hollow when you don't actually have a plan that you're talking about, initiating. So saying let's just not, if we just didn't have this thing, if we didn't have this kind of large ambiguous problem, then everything would be okay. It doesn't say, it's saying what you don't like doesn't say what you are, what you do. And in this case, I haven't seen a detriment to the quality of life for Clarkston and all of the other people who already live here that's resulting from new folks being resettled in and around Clarkston. I think that lots of resources come to Clarkston through federal programs, state administered programs, to support refugees being resettled. As I said before, downtown Clarkston would look a lot different. You didn't have very entrepreneurially oriented refugees and former refugees taking advantage of available low rental commercial space and making it work. I think that we have a lot to thank for them not running. Back in the 80s, when you had the grandchildren of the old, moneyed, benefactors of the community of old Clarkston, when they took a look at what the real estate boom was doing in the Atlanta area, they realized that, I have as much of a commitment as my grandmother or my grandfather to staying in Clarkston, so I'm just going to go ahead and take this money and maybe, flip this and turn this into an apartment complex here, and then I'm going to split town and go to Sewanee.
So, would you guys generally say that the city council agrees with or supports the reduction in the refugees coming into Clarkston, or is there not a general consensus?
No, we don't support the reduction in refugees at all. The strategy, when I talk to people, the strategy, is this coming through? I can barely hear myself on this, so just wonder if it's coming through okay. The strategy is to solve problems and to make Clarkston a more sustainable community for those coming in, and that they don't go to Sewanee, they don't move away, and they help others that come in behind them. We want to build our community, and we want the diversity of the community to expand.
Mayor, do you have anything to respond?
Yeah, but everybody has their own opinion. And as the mayor, I've been here 52 years, and I've seen where it was when I got here and where it's going. And when I say it's a strain on our taxpayers, I mean that the federal government hasn't shown any sympathy for our city, or has never compensated our city for the influx that we've had, because we came from 2 police officers to 15 full-time police officers, 4 marked cars, 4 unmarked cars, 1 paddy wagon, right, 2 SUVs, and a holding cell facility. This is where we came from, and the city has never been compensated, and for the federal government to take that money and delve it out to some agencies to do programs that I know for a fact that weren't done, it's ludicrous. And they need to, like I keep saying, cut that faucet off and fix the pipe, and then they can bring in as many citizens as they want. But you got to fix the problem first. You just can't keep compiling the problem. You just can't do it. It doesn't work.
So there's this emphasis on the law. You talked about law-abiding, teaching them how to be law-abiding taxpayer, law-abiding citizen, and you also referenced the need for the growth in police enforcement. Are you attributing the need for more police enforcement to the refugee community?
No, that's not what I'm implying. I'm implying that for every so many citizens, the city is required to supply public safety. And that means for so many citizens, we have to have 1 officer. So I'm telling you that we came from 2 officers to 15. So what does that tell you? The city is growing. And I would rather see the federal government spend $21,000 on educating a citizen than to pay $93,000 to incarcerate them.
All right, I have to comment about that one. There have been a considerable number of studies. Actually, I brought some excerpts from it, but I won't go ahead and read it. But in fact, I believe that, that among people who are incarcerated in this country, people who are born in the United States, just on average, among men 18 to 36, people born in the U.S. are 5 times more likely to be incarcerated than people who are foreign born. And interestingly enough, in the parts of the country which have the highest immigration rates, actually have the lowest rates of crime among people who are foreign born. Interesting further that California, which actually has the highest rate of immigration, legal and illegal, it's the correlation of the relationship between people who are born in the U.S. versus those who are foreign born. People born in the U.S. in the context of California are actually 11 times more likely to be incarcerated relative to those people who are foreign born. So I don't see a strong correlation. I feel like the federally administered refugee resettlement program brings so much money to us. And I think it brings money in a lot of ways that are not completely visible to people who don't have much face time with it. I think part of it is that speaking of the refugee community is very homogenizing, and I think that's a complete distortion of the concept of what it means to be a refugee. I think being on this side, essentially one might see refugees arriving, but I think what's much more telling is what are they leaving behind, and why are they leaving it behind? What are their aspirations? I think that there is a significant amount of evidence to suggest that refugees among legal immigrants have a very high success rate of assimilating and becoming very successful themselves. Their children going on to be very successful. They're on a legal track to citizenship. In fact, they're mandated to have to run on that track. Immediately being granted their I-94, then and then they can use that in order to provide proof of eligibility for employment, and within a year they've got to apply for their green card. So I mean, they're on a track. The idea of kind of trying to lump them into this overall immigration debate, as it were, I think is a real distortion. And to be honest, I don't think it's constructive for us to contemplate it. Our schools were I think our schools were declining a long time ago, and unfortunately I think the economic downturn has been a very perfect opportunity for people to capitalize on trying to figure out some way to explain why things are so much worse than they used to be.
Is there anything else you guys would like to add or respond in terms of law enforcement, crime, and the refugee population?
I think part of the problem that isn't being addressed is when Clarkston was chosen as a refugee resettlement city, part of the reason we were chosen was where we're located. We're 285, 85, 75, 20. We're all, at the crossroads, 78. We're at the crossroads of every major road. But I believe that people thought there were a lot more jobs within a very close area of that, or it was easy to get to them. Well, the reality of some of that is that the jobs are actually farther away than people thought, because first, they don't know English, so you've got to find a place for them to start being, having a sustainable lifestyle in a place that will accept the fact they don't have English skills right away. So those places seem to be, an hour away at least. Maybe by the time you add drive time and everything, it's up to 2 hours a day going and coming. And I see some problems with families because both mom and dad are working, and they're working with those kind of hours, and they don't always have time to get the English skills because they can't fit in the classes with those working hours and the being away time. And then they've got children who, as they grow and need more time, need more parental involvement, especially the middle school and the high school. Our schools are facing a lot of truancy. They're having a lot of problems with the teenage kids, forming little gangs, etc. So there is a family problem that hasn't been addressed. And I think that's part of the reason that we're saying, wait, let's stop and really look at this picture, because I don't think it's exactly what you thought it would be for them. Now, because I really don't think that's a good situation for those families to be in when their job, where they end up having to work, is such a distance. It's very hard to parent, and then if you don't know the English, how do you help the kids at school? You can't get the English because you're at work and spending so much time traveling to and from and working. So there's a little bit bigger picture to this. It's not as cut and dry as it appears. And you know, part of getting Clarkston up and running and really turning into a viable, economically progressive community is then being able to provide jobs, provide ways to become an entrepreneur. There's just a bigger picture to the whole thing. And we aren't seeing it right now because until we start putting the pieces into place, it's not totally happening. So you've got to have a vision for that. And you have to have some time to let that work. You know, that's just my thoughts on it. And like I said before, developers are not going to be interested in Clarkston to be able to pull us from being the 1970s Clarkston to being in the 21st century, even for the new people coming here. That's what they expect. They didn't expect to come to a third world country. They expected to come to a vibrant America with opportunities to become everything that their God-given ability is. And we want to provide that for them.
So in order to provide that or that vision, what are the necessary steps? Is it reducing the number of refugees that come in, like that has been suggested, or is it, I guess, reworking some of the core things in the city itself? Or so how would we even go about solving these problems?
I don't think that you look at reducing it as a detriment. It's like, let's take a breath and see what's actually best for them. If they move within 2 to 3 years, it's been my experience with the families that I've been working with, they are trying to move out of Clarkston to buy homes, to get closer to their work. I mean, just like you or I would. I mean, once they're here, it takes a while to assimilate, it takes a while to get the bigger picture, it takes a while to learn from those who've come before you, etc. And like I said before, when they're asking to go to different schools, when they're trying to find homes where they can move out, and they don't want single homes, they want to keep with their whole family group. There's one family I'm working with, part of their family has already moved to Lilburn. And they're now looking for a 5-bedroom home because they want all of the married sons to live with the mom and dad and all the grandchildren. It's a different picture or a different model than Americans are used to. So there's and they're not going to find a 5-bedroom home in Clarkston. Our housing stock just doesn't have it.
It's just not there.
So we can't even meet their need when they want to move on from the apartment that isn't the greatest.
I guess we'll just kind of retract back into the article. Also, so another thing we talked about jobs and the job market and the need to create more jobs. Mayor, you said in the article that the city needs time to create more jobs for the refugees. Would you care to expand on that?
Well, we're working on that right now. There's an organization called Village Capital that is now mentoring 15 entrepreneurs to open up businesses in Clarkston, and it's a wonderful program. It's about a 14-week program, and that's resources that we never had before to actually cultivate citizens that want to be business owners, and also they're doing it for business owners that are in business now. I think there's about 4 of them that are in the program, and this will help them. In other words, education is the main key. If you don't know, you need to learn. And we've had so many problems in the past, like we've had a lot of very, very successful business owners that when they came to Clarkston, they didn't know how to file for a permit to do renovation or put in HVAC or to knock down a wall. These are things that even this 101 is educating, our citizens. And this is the main thing, education. And the city itself is got how many programs now doing education? 4 or 5 of them now. And we also have a planning director in place now that he's an expertise on the pros and the cons, how you can help a business owner come up and be successful, because basically the city can't be inundated with duplication of businesses because nobody will succeed. And this is where education is involved. And, you might be an entrepreneur in this type of business, but guess what? This is the one that's needed. And we can help you cultivate your business plan to meet this need, which will make you successful. But if you open up the same business that this person has, you'll close up in 6 months. You won't be able to succeed. So basically, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to educate and inform, information network.
Oh, actually, I kind of wanted to ask Mr. Moore, because I see him shaking his head. Do you have any response to what Mayor Ransom said?
Well, basically, we're a city. We don't have an education system. We try to develop programs that will help educate people as to the process of the city. As far as telling people whether they can open up the same business or not, we don't get involved in that. We're not in the business of telling people what to do and what not to do. They can open up any business they want to. We would like them to comply with standards that we have, and that's why we've implemented the housing ordinance. And the city manager is trying to help business owners understand what our rules and regulations are, so that they don't run afoul of what the laws are and what the normal business practices are.
I think Councilman Moore misunderstood what I was saying. I wasn't dictating or telling them that they couldn't open up a business. What I was saying is they need to be informed of what would be successful for them. Even though this, you've got business owners that are there now that when another business comes in, they'll ask the city, why are you letting them open up a business that I have? They're selling the same thing I'm selling. Well, this is a capitalistic society. If they meet all the requirements, yes, they can open up a business. But we don't need another one like that. This is what the city says it needs. Why can't y'all suggest to them that this might be more successful than opening up the same kind of business that you have? And that's what I'm talking about, to inform. We had a business owner this morning sit with us, and he finally changed his mind, only because the city suggested that the plan down the line is for this type of businesses to succeed in our city, to be successful, because eventually the ordinances have changed. We're going to have outdoor restaurants now. We're going to have canopies and so forth and so on. These are the things we're looking forward to. We're not looking forward to a block store just to be set down, because we've got 2 big stores that are coming into the city right now. And as you know, Walmart takes away mom and pop businesses. Am I correct or am I not? There you go. Our city is a small city. We have 2 big anchor stores that are going to be in our city. But we want the business owners, the small mom and pop businesses, to be successful. We don't want them to invest money in a piece of property and open up, and 6 months later they're gone, because it's not productive for the city. I'd much rather see separate businesses downtown than to have 10 duplicated businesses downtown, because there's no revenue involved. If a store is closed up for 6 to 8 months, what does that do? That causes crime, vagrants, and it's like a magnet. Even though none of these young folks have the ideas that I have, it's just the fact that we all have different opinions. But eventually, it's going to come down to one fact: you got to inform people. You got to let them know, look, we want you to invest the money here in our city, but we don't want you to fail. We want you to succeed, because failing is not an option. That's my point.
I think I kind of feel like we're kind of rabbit trailing a little bit. For me, the big picture, kind of to pull a thread in from what we were talking about earlier, is transforming Clarkston into a destination, a unique locality that has its own identity, that has its own brand. It's essentially trying to identify what can give Clarkston a collective boost in self-esteem. Clarkston, I think, there was a study that was done about 5 years ago, a sociological study that looked at communities that were extremely culturally and ethnically diverse. And extreme diversity in some circumstances can have the effect that causes people to keep themselves separate from one another. And that's something that I think Clarkston needs to overcome. That is a sociological phenomenon that I don't understand, but apparently that may be something that's at play in our community. There's a lot of this tendency to compare old and new Clarkston. I think Clarkston needs to say that, I think it means that lots of people need to try to find a common forum for participation. And I think the idea of feeling that it is the obligation of some members of the community to create a context within which other members of the community can feel involved, I think is alienating. And so it's going to take, I don't know the answer. I feel like my job is just to kind of push it along and be encouraging. But I think it's going to happen organically. Clarkston needs to feel like it can do what it likes, what it imagines it can do. Clarkston hasn't gotten a sense of itself yet, despite all of the talk about what it used to be. No one seems to agree. Clarkston, I think, could be a place that is known for its diversity, and that people come here from outside of the city because they would like to partake of that. There have been studies done. That's one of the reasons being an arborist, and I was serving as the arborist for the city for a couple of years before I was on city council. There have been some great studies that were done in downtown Chicago that showed that in cities in urban areas with lots of trees throughout the community, that people tend to come outside of their houses and interact with each other. There's a lot more community organizations that are active and engage and collaborate with one another. It's one of the reasons why I've been pushing for a lot of environmentally oriented initiatives while I've been on city council, because I think as I said, when I'm standing out in my yard, I see a lot more of my neighbors, and they get to know me a lot better. And it's not that I'm seeking them out, I just chance to run across them. I think, I know so many communities. I grew up in the New York area, very diverse area, a lot of diverse communities there. And it's not high diversity is not correlated to economically disadvantaged circumstances. And I think that's there's a real tendency to collapse those concepts, but I don't see there's a strong relationship there. And I think that once people stop homogenizing and talking about the other, and saying what they would like to see happen, but create some construct that prevents them from being able to do it, and so they just preempt any of their best intentions, then it's going to take a few people making themselves really vulnerable and just taking a risk.
It appears to me, just from the conversation and the way that's going, that both the city council and the mayor have this idea of establishing Clarkston as a destination that highlights its diversity as a strength, but it just appears that it diverges on its means and its vision.
Mm-hmm.
And in what terms do you guys, or what is city council's vision in order to make this Clarkston as a destination possible, and what is the mayor's vision? Because it just seems to be kind of contrasting.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to provide the ground, we lay out the groundwork, and it'll be up to the people really to do it. We don't, as Adam and Dean both said, we don't tell them what to do or how to do it, but hopefully we can provide some resources for them to determine what would best work for them, their lifestyle, their family, in the context of Clarkston. I happen to attend a church that has 110 nations that go to it. That's unique in itself in the whole of the United States, because it's very hard to pull 110 nations together. We have 60-something nations in Clarkston. I'm not sure that we have that many right now, because there's huge, there are concentrations of different countries there. But right now, I think when they're new, when they first come to this country, they function mostly with their own. Maybe the second generation here is the one that start to branch out and intermingle with other cultures. So I think in the retail and economic development aspect, changing the mindset of the entrepreneurs to think more in terms of how do I get the people driving through Clarkston to stop at my store, or my restaurant, what would make an interesting reason for them to want to stop, because between Tucker and Decatur, there's really no reason right now for anyone to stop as such, unless you're looking for a unique, diverse experience. And I'm going to say, you know, right now, I don't think the majority of people do that when they drive through Clarkston. We're unique, we love it, we live there, and yes, we do. But in order for Clarkston to flourish and provide economic opportunities for those who choose to stay in Clarkston, we have to get the outside to say, wow, you know, I want to go there, I'd like to experience this, I'd like to experience that. And that changes the mindset also in the business owner. Because right now they seem to they know how to cater to their own, and there's a few of us that can influx in and out, but still not very many. So now how do we get them to cater to a diverse, how do we get them to embrace diversity? That's a big thing.
That's exactly, I agree. That's exactly what I've been saying. Exactly. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make our refugee citizens take the diversity and make it a strength. I mean, we can't do it by ourselves. You know, we have to have the population help us. And that's exactly what I've been saying. She just put it in better words.
No, I don't feel like it's my obligation to try to encourage people to think a particular way or to approach their business a particular way. I think that I think that we as a legislative body in the municipality are responsible for trying to look after the proper functioning of administrative, regulatory component of the framework for the city. But I think in terms of how people choose to operate their business, what their business model is, kind of how they present themselves, I think that most businesses don't survive forever, and people need to have the opportunity to do it their own way, within the framework of our local ordinances. But our ordinances are not to try to control how people live their lives. I think I'm okay with us not making a perfect decision, but keeping mindful of the fact that we want people's best interest. I think Dean's got something on his mind. So,
well, we lay the groundwork for possibilities to grow. That's our motto. Clarkston's where possibilities grow. We've passed policies on development for complete streets, the housing issues with the apartment complexes, community gardens. Each of us, when we walk out the door, try to promote positive things. You see crime or something, you want to report that or take care of it. But generally, in talking to people, we want a positive atmosphere. We want to have good streets, place where it's where you can walk, you can meet people, get together. So that's where we are laying our groundwork now with positive development and the complete streets. We've got a lot of pedestrians on North Indian Creek. There's actually a transportation project, the TIA DK 033, that we're hoping to get funding, we're just a city. This is outside the city, so it's DeKalb County, and we were hoping to get funding on that from the T-SPLOS vote that failed for our area. Hopefully that project is still in the works. Every time I drive down North Indian Creek, I see 2 or 3 dozen people walking along the streets close to the vehicles going by. So those are the kind of things that we need to address, is providing a fertile ground for those that come here to let their possibilities grow, to develop whatever business they want to do, and to live productive lives. And like I said before, we want to promote sustainability where they come here and help others come here as well. So we are in the process of creating a destination.
I guess just we have to see this all in light of the reduction in refugees coming into Georgia, because since last year there has been a 20% cut in how many refugees do come. And just to, I guess, as an estimate, how much does each refugee cost to the city? What does the city spend on them? And what programs does the city offer to refugees that are not funded by grants at either a state or federal level? In terms of how much is Clarkston's own money is going into each refugee, in terms of like, is it really draining the resources, and why is the necessity to reduce the number?
Well, if you're servicing 10 people, and you have one police officer, one trash truck, and in 10 years you have 100,000 people, how many police officers do you need? How many trash trucks do you need? How many employees in the sanitation department do you need? That's the problem. The federal government doesn't realize that the taxpayers that are here now are footing the bill to sustain the services that we're mandated to sustain, no matter how many citizens we get in our city. And it's just that it's that the refugees aren't draining the city of its resources. It's the federal government that's causing the problem.
But are refugees also taxpayers who are also funding?
No, we're not talking about the citizens that come in and start a business and and so forth and go on and do exactly what they're supposed to do. We're talking about the citizens that are living in those multifamily dwellings. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the rental properties. We're not talking about property owners. We're talking about rental properties now, because I think almost 85% of our properties in our city are rental, and that's a strain on our budget to supply services for that.
But if the refugees weren't in there, then wouldn't these apartment complexes potentially go out of business?
Well, no. It hasn't been in the 52 years I've been here. Haven't gone out of business. They just rent to lower class people. Like we've had 2 complexes in our city that totally that the city took note and actually went in there and looked at these complexes, and with DeKalb County, they closed one of them, which is now Clarkston Station. They spent $19 million on that complex. Beautiful. You got one across the street was what was that called? The old one, the Avalon. What was it called?
Southern Place.
No, not Southern Place. It was something else.
Oh yeah.
But anyway,
I forget what the name of that was.
There's another $17 million that has happened now, which is now Avalon on Montreal, which is beautiful housing. Even though they have 10%, I think, is low income, but it's beautiful, clean, efficient housing for them now. And they're not threatened when they complain about, oh, there's a leak in my ceiling, and their landlord retaliates against them. This is totally gone. But we still have the complexes that are in our city that are totally, I wouldn't put I wouldn't put a dog in some of them to live, because it's just appalling for them to place people in facilities like that. So what does the city do? The city has no resources to help in situations like that. So we just pass them on back to the Office of Refugee Resettlement. And what happens? A lot of them are being turned away. But now there's a mandate in place that they have to supply services even for 180 days after they are released from the 90-day program, which I think is an excellent program. And that helps with the strain of the city. The government is taking responsibilities now. Yeah, but as far as actually a drain, it's not a drain per se. It's a drain because the city is mandated to supply those services, and we're not getting any compensation for it. That's exactly what it is.
The apartment complex he's talking about ended up in foreclosure, and there's another one just recently went into foreclosure. And what the banks are doing is they're starting a new policy of investigating these loans that they give out to the apartment buyers. The one in particular, English Oaks, was recently foreclosed on. The owner had that for several years and wasn't putting money back into it. When the bank foreclosed on it and discovered what condition it was in, they've started a new policy where they are going to follow up on these investments at least once a year. I'm told that it might be a couple of times a year to make sure that they are being maintained. And that's been a problem. That has nothing to do with the refugee or whoever lives there. And as far as the city goes, I don't think that there's really any drain on the city other than it's our responsibility to make sure that they are better cared for. And that's why we've got the new ordinance to have all the apartment complex be inspected by a licensed inspector, each individual unit within 2 years, 100% inspected, and then I think it's 20% every year after that. So when the tenants are moving out, they can have a licensed inspector go in there, and as part of their business licensing through the city. And that's the kind of methods that the city will do to help enhance the living conditions for anybody who lives in these apartments.
Is there anything you guys would like to add?
So the original question was the cost for each refugee. I can't think of what the additional cost would be. You know, the resettlement process is giving let me see. Resettlement agencies giving like $10 million a year to the DeKalb school system. Who else is given to getting the $10 million grant? You know, to that school system. To be honest, right now, I'm not sure that someone would give $10 million to that school system. But you know, I'm trying to think of how much money gets, you know, every year. It's like over $2 million that the resettlement agencies are funneling through the greater Clarkston area. Businesses are getting money out. You know, I think that is more than offsetting. And I think, as we were talking about the idea of law enforcement, I don't think that refugees are contributing significantly to, you know, the crime rate. Perhaps they don't know they're supposed to fully stop at a stoplight, but that doesn't seem like a significant burden on our infrastructure. Yeah, I mean, I think about all the things that caught the kind of the significant budget issues that we have to deal with as a municipality, and I don't think we're being overly burdened. I mean, refugees, I think it's like, you know, 80% of I may be misquoting this, 80% of refugees, you know, become employed within that first 90-day period. So, you know, they're paying taxes. I mean, I don't know that we're getting a lot of taxes from them as renters per se, but they are, what was the mayor was saying? They're contributing members of society. I mean, and you can't necessarily say that for every American-born person or other legal immigrant. I mean, that's less of it. The point is, you know, I think that refugees have, if we're just speaking of refugees generally, they have a vested interest in really wanting to make this work.
And I think that's what a lot of people have been having issues with, this idea that refugees are taking as opposed to giving. Because normally the economic argument is reversed. More people create more jobs. For example, refugees are consumers for local businesses, letting them hire more people. If refugees stop coming, there would be less jobs in Clarkston. And so it's I think how people are viewing the situations that refugees and immigrants are not an economic benefit, but it appears that they are, and that these state and federal funds do pay for things like food stamps and Medicaid and different resettlement agencies. And these costs aren't shouldered by the city of Clarkston. But is the city of Clarkston shouldering these costs, these additional costs?
That's the exact argument that Brian Bollinger just made in his article in Creative Living.
Yeah, that's the one I'm citing.
Oh.
Sorry, I should have said that. Exactly.
Okay. I mean, I'll let somebody else say.
Yeah, well, you know, you have to look at it from a different running over into a thrift town market. We'd be in trouble. You know, they'd take our charter away from us. And that's what I'm talking about. You have to supply these services. Even though we aren't getting any compensation for it, we're mandated to do it. When our population increases, when they send us that form, now they send it, the form that we're having 743 Bhutanese come into our city has to look at that and find out, do we need to put on another police officer? Because these are the figures we get, right? And with our permanent residents, which is about 7,800 in that neighborhood?
Yeah.
All right. So what do we need to supply 7,800 people? Because when I came to Clarkston, it wasn't 7,800 people. You know, we had one police officer, one car. Then it was 2 police officers in one car. Now we have 15 police officers. Do you understand what I'm saying about the progression of services that we have to keep supplying because of the influx of citizens that we have? They don't have to be refugees. They could be American citizens.
Mr. Mayor, the interesting example that you gave about the significant increase in the number of customers who are shopping over at Thrift Town, the idea being that they're spending money that is being distributed through these federal programs, assuming that, you know, let's say the net increase is composed of all these newly arrived refugees, and then those monies in turn are being reported back as net earnings or gross earnings on the part of Thrift Town, who is then paying more money to the city. So in a way, we're deriving a benefit from that.
Yeah, we're driving a benefit, but I don't think we're driving the benefit that we deserve. That's my point. I think that it's up to the federal authorities and even the state. One of the state legislatures agree with me. You know, there should be some type of compensation to the city itself for the services they have to supply, because you can't put this. Even our basic commercial community does not support the revenue of our city. You know, I mean, basically, it's our real estate taxes that supports our city right now. And of course, you know, the real estate market is in the toilet. So if to place another police officer, it's about, what, 37 something starting, you know, that's another strain on our property owners, not the commercial community, because our commercial community was actually in the toilet and paying taxes. But now that we have a city manager that's jumped on board and starting to audit some of these businesses and make them pay the taxes that they weren't paying. Thrift Town was one of the few companies downtown that have never shucked on paying their taxes, you know. But the city is not compensated for it.
Well, hold on, that's actually two. I mean, just to clarify, because those are actually two distinct things. One is that was the city's inability to collect the monies that were actually due to them, and or not necessarily doing efficient accounting of those monies and allocating them towards providing the services to its residents, or is it that there's an undue, is it a matter of an undue strain on city services? So which is it? I mean, it all comes down to money, right?
That's, all comes down to finances.
Yeah. So if we're not managing our finances well, and we're not collecting, or we're making not making efficient use of it, could have essentially the same or more drastic effect than this speculation about whether or not a large number of newly arrived refugees are putting the strain on the resources of the city.
No, it's not their fault. I'm not blaming it on the refugee population that's coming in. I mean, like I keep saying, we're mandated to supply those services, no matter how many come in. I don't care if they're Irish, French, or Spanish. If they come into our city, we're mandated to supply those services. So what does that do? We put a strain on our owners that own properties.
I think what's challenging about that argument is that it is very speculative. I mean, interestingly enough, I think we did so well by bringing on a city manager that
I have no doubt
if we
about
can
that.
be as successful as we have been in the past couple of years under very difficult economic times, under this potentially challenging circumstance of the having to bear the weight of all of these newly arrived and resettled new residents, that I think that we're probably in a great situation. There's really only one way to go. And I think in some ways, when success is hard won, everybody appreciates it a lot more. So I think this is just pretty much how it has been. And I think that if you want an easy job, then you probably don't want to be in public service in a place like Clarkston.
Just to be clear, Mayor, are you saying that the city of Clarkston receives no federal funding or state
We
funding
never
for
received it. Never.
police enforcement? Ever?
Ever.
No.
Okay, just making sure. I just want to make that clear. I know that you guys mentioned.
Oh, excuse me, and let me tell you this, that recently when I went to Washington, I found out that we weren't informed that we could apply for impact grants for refugee influx in the cities. A lot of cities that are getting refugee citizens did apply because they were notified. They were given that information that if you have a strain on your economy there are federal funds out here called impact grants that you could apply for. Clarkston was never notified of that.
But that's what I'm getting at, is that Clarkston essentially is getting its house in order.
We're getting our act together now.
And so to attribute it solely to the effect of being a long-term refugee resettlement locality, I think is I think that's an easy way to just kind of blame the problem on someone else, instead of taking ownership of who we are and why we are the way why we are being the way that we are, because we want to be this place, and reaching out and creating partnerships and creating relationships. And I think that we have isolated ourselves, as I said earlier on, socially and politically we isolated ourselves for a really long time, and now we're coming out of our shell and realizing that a lot of people were waiting for us to come back around.
It all seems like this is coming at the expense of just reducing the amount of refugees coming in. So, Mayor, are you going to advocate more in the future for even reducing more of the refugees influxing, or what are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that once we, like Councilman said, we're coming out of our cocoon now. We're getting our act together. We're getting the resources that we didn't know we could get. We're applying for them now, and we're actually working towards it. And also, the Office of Refugee Resettlement is helping. Michael Singleton's office, I think, is doing a great job now, because he himself has cut back the 4-year terms that the refugee agencies apply for their certificates. It's now every year. And that's excellent, because we won't get lost in the crowd. In other words, our refugee citizens won't get lost in that bureaucracy now, because he's requiring everybody to recertify themselves every year, show us what programs you're giving out to our refugee citizens, and if you can't supply those programs, you have to turn in your certificate. Because if you say you have 25 citizens that you can supply services, and you only have 3 employees, then you can't supply those services. And that's what's happening in the past years now. And now that the city is aware of things like that, and we're being asked to collaborate with the agencies now, it makes the job much easier for us. And after a year's time, they're going to increase the population back, but like I said, they're fixing the problems. And Michael was very pleased with it, because he himself was just new in the job. And he had a lot of problems, I'll put it like that he had to fix. And he couldn't keep fixing them if he keep piling it on. And now he's got his act together, I'll put it like that. Yeah, definitely. And I totally agree that, when our refugee citizens first started coming to our city, I was one of the soothsayers. I was. I wholly and heartily admitted, why are they sending those people to my country? Why are they taking those jobs away from my American citizens? Oh, I was definitely in that mind frame. But my mind was changed. And that's what I'm saying about, I heard the comment that the councilman made over here. You can change people's minds. You can. All you have to do is give them the right information, and they'll change their mind. Just like you're not dictating to them, but you're giving them that information, because the human being has one thing that animals don't have. We can make a decision.
I think in this conversation too, we lose sight of the fact that yes, there are 7,800 people in the city of Clarkston, which is 1 square mile. we're not talking about the zip code of Clarkston. And I believe even the article alludes to the zip code of Clarkston.
That's right.
And we can only affect what happens within that 1 square mile. So, first of all, being one of the most densely populated cities in the United States has an effect on anyone, whether you're trying to live there as a resident or trying to live there as a new citizen. So you have to understand that whole, the whole dynamics to that is a lot different than living in unincorporated DeKalb County. So some of the questions you're asking, I think you lose sight of the fact that we're talking about 1 square mile, not what people generally think of as Clarkston. And that makes a big difference.
Thank you, Diane.
You know,
forgot
for a
about
city
that,
to be
yeah.
desirable, for improvement, for growth, for economic opportunity, you've got to
got
provide
that same
for
pen.
everyone.
Okay.
Whether you're making $200,000 a year or whether you're receiving from the government. And when you have an overbalance of one particular, I don't know how to say it, we need to get a middle class going in Clarkston. We need to provide more housing. We need to provide that economic opportunity. Whether we bring it up through the refugees who are entrepreneurs or who through their work life begin to start, you know, able to save, able to buy their car. I mean, I think the first thing they do is to buy a car, and then they're looking for housing. I mean, like I said before, there's no way they're going to look in Clarkston in general because they want a house that provides more room for more of their family to all stay together. So there's a lot of dynamics, and it's 1 square mile, not unincorporated DeKalb County.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today's questions, but thank you all so very much for joining us today. And this concludes Sagal's first roundtable discussion. This is Linda Chen, and this program is brought to you by Sagal Radio in collaboration with Emory University Center for Community Partnership. To hear more about Sagal Radio, visit our webpage at www.thesagalradio.org.